What is going on, everybody? We are back with some more draft content today. Today we have the top 10 running backs. A couple quick reminders. Please do hit that like button if you enjoy. Also, if you enjoy my draft content, you want the full TFG Draft Insider package. You want to know not just my top 10 running backs, but my top 40 running backs. You want full grades on all those players, descriptions. You want exclusive video breakdowns, as well as full 7-round mock draft soon to be coming on Patreon. Do check out patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy where you can get access to all that stuff. So we're going to get into it here with the running backs. I do need to talk about something real quick. I've made some changes to my process a little bit just to kind of show a little bit more of my projection and really factoring in scheme fits for these guys. Because as you guys know, it's very rare that a player is in any scheme fit. You can plug them in anywhere and it doesn't really matter. So to actually really project better like where these guys would fit, I think it's something that my draft process was missing a little bit, so we're adding it to the running back, and I just might go back as we get closer to the draft and do it again for at least for wide receivers. So you can include that scheme fit in there, but that's pretty far down the road. But yeah, you'll see a projection and a scheme fit in there, and then I've put in the description down below a little more explanation on what that stuff means. So I do encourage you guys to check it out. I think you might find it informative as well. So without further ado, we have the number 1 running back in this class, and to be honest, my top 4 running backs are neck and neck and neck. I have a very hard time differentiating these guys, but I do have DeAndre Swift as the number 1 running back. The smoothest receiver to me, the smoothest athlete out of these top 4 guys. I do think he has the highest upside in this class. My comparison is Alvin Kamara. It's that combination of contact balance, ability to make people miss, and then of course the ability to contribute as a receiver, which is so important these days. So all those things give DeAndre Swift just a slight nod. But the thing is, with these top 4 running backs, to me there's no Josh Jacobs, there's no Saquon Barkley, there's no one that can really plug in anywhere. I see DeAndre Swift as a guy that will contribute as a receiving back as well as being a good inside zone patient runner. You know, if you draft him to be that power running back to hit holes hard, if you draft him to be that outside zone running back and a big play threat as far as like speed to the outside, like a Kyle Shanahan system or Green Bay, Minnesota, one of these, you might end up a little disappointed. And I think you got to have those conversations with all these top running backs here. So I do have DeAndre Swift number 1, but then as you can see right behind him, Jonathan Taylor out of Wisconsin is my number 2 running back. A bit of a combination of like that Leonard Fournette, almost Adrian Peterson, home run hitting power runner. Not very shifty, actually struggles quite a bit as a receiver, and he also needs to clean up his fumbling issues, like 18 fumble, like just crazy amounts of fumbles, which is actually very similar to Adrian Peterson early on in his career. Not necessarily a modern running back, but still a skill set that in the right place can be an effective player. A team that really wants to run the ball is going to need a good offensive line in front of him, just because he doesn't necessarily make a ton of guys miss, but is kind of that home run hitting threat, a little bit like what Derrick Henry did for Tennessee as well with that power running style. So he's going to be definitely someone that teams might stay away from just because of the lack of versatilities, but full steam ahead. This guy has great patience as well, so I do like Jonathan Taylor in the right place. And then third, I've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Again, you can see the grades right there. 2nd round grades for all these guys. I do not think any of these guys warrant taking in the 1st round. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire, very similar to DeAndre Swift. Not quite as explosive and as athletic, but he does come with, I think, a lower center of gravity. Reminds me a lot of the old Maurice Jones-Drew, just, 5'8", 210 pounds, so stocky, so hard to actually get down to the ground because of the leverage he has. So elite contact balance, but again, not quite as explosive. Is very good as a receiver as well. You could give him a Kareem Hunt comparison as well. Could be very accurate for both him or DeAndre Swift, or even for another guy that we'll talk about in a second in this class. But yeah, all these guys neck and neck, like I keep saying. A 2nd round grade for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And again, someone I'd put in that inside zone, basically everything we said about DeAndre Swift. And then we've got another power style guy here, J.K. Dobbins. I wasn't like blown away by J.K. Dobbins, but you can clearly see the straight line speed, the power, put blocking in front of him, and just get out of his way. Very similar to like Ezekiel Elliott coming out of Ohio State. Zeke a little more fluid, much better hands as a receiver. So not quite as well-rounded, but a pretty similar running back, honestly. And you guys know I'm not particularly high on Zeke. So put him in the second round where Ezekiel Elliott probably should have been drafted anyway. Hence the Nick Chubb comparisons, who maybe isn't quite as good as a receiver as Ezekiel Elliott, but for the most part, pretty similar running back. Also a second-round pick like we had for J.K. Dobbins. You could end up with a very good NFL running back, one of the more explosive guys in this class, and definitely one of the most powerful ones. So all those guys to me are real close, kind of depends on scheme, kind of comes down as like Swift and Taylor are 1A, 1B, Edwards and Dobbins are 2A, 2B. But if you wanted any of those guys as your number one running back out of this class, I wouldn't really argue it. And then this fifth guy here, Zack Moss, I think is pretty close to those guys as well. I think he's a tiny cut below just because he doesn't quite have the athleticism that those guys have, but a very similar player to everything we said about DeAndre Swift and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Has that outstanding contact balance. It felt like he broke the first tackle, well, let's just say more often than he didn't. Very similar to me, David Montgomery coming out last year, who was a third-round pick to the Bears. Really fluid receiver, can definitely run for some power, but I've got him as that inside zone style, kind of, let the block set up a little bit more, not necessarily like rely on the offensive line to clear a single gap for you and you explode through it. More, that patient running style. Maybe you have to make a guy miss. That's kind of what the inside zone scheme is if you read about it down in the description below. But yeah, I really like Zack Moss. Just maybe not all of the big play ability that you would get in some of these other guys, but should honestly come in a running back needy team, should be able to plug him in as a starter right away. So those top five guys to me are projected to me as day one starters, which to me is the highest tier that I have for my projection system. I don't really get into who's going to be a star, who's an all-pro type of talent. Just, are they a day one starter as far as the projections are concerned? Then the next tier is, of course, going to be guys that have potential to be starters. And that's where I have Anthony McFarland as my number 6 running back. Wide range of outcomes for him. Comes out as a redshirt sophomore, was splitting carries there with Javon Leaks, so limited sample size. Only played 734 snaps in his entire career, no season over 400 snaps. So definitely a projection, but you also like that he's coming in fresh. That was a thing with Josh Jacobs is, yeah, he got a limited sample size, but he looked good in the time he played, and he doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires, and there's a lot of upside there. So I love his explosiveness. Very different player to Josh Jacobs. He's more of that small, explosive receiving back who can be an outside zone guy. Would be an amazing fit in like San Francisco or Green Bay, where they love that outside zone off of play action. A guy that can be that home run threat and have a 60-yard run without even getting touched because of the scheme. Darrell Henderson is my comp for him right now. Now, it's not that he can't break tackles. There's just not a large sample size of him doing that. He can run for a little bit of power. He's kind of like Aaron Jones as well. It would be a decent comparison. So a really explosive guy, really young, not a lot of tread on the tires. Just needs to kind of refine his game a little bit. Particular to me in this receiving game where he just didn't run the sharpest routes, didn't show the best hands, but he can certainly grow in that area. And then my number 7 running back is almost the polar opposite of the guy we just talked about, Lamical Perine. I've got a 4th round grade on him. Reminds me a lot of Spencer Ware, a low-end starter, a quality, safe backup, kind of a do-it-all guy. Not a crazy athlete, but good enough to be a starter for sure. He's got the size to run you over. He's got good contact balance, decent patience. I love how smooth he is as a receiver. Can flip his hips, pluck the ball, and keep moving without losing a lot of momentum. A lot of that reminds me of Spencer Ware. Now, there might be a certain upside that you're missing out on here, but you're looking 4th, 5th round for a guy that can be a backup, a safe pick to fill out your depth chart, and if anything happens to your starter, you can get that guy that will contribute immediately. Then my number 8 running back, we're kind of back to the boom or bust pick here with Antonio Gibson. Extremely explosive back. One of, if not the most explosive backs in the entire class. I think McFarland is slightly more, but when Gibson gets going, look out. And the interesting thing with him is he played a significant chunk of wide receiver at Memphis. He had to declare that he is actually going to be playing running back at the next level. So you're getting a guy that doesn't necessarily have the patience, not a lot of reps between the tackles. That's why I have him as that outside zone scheme fit. I do think you get him on the outside, you get him involved on different ways to get him the ball. He can be a really explosive playmaker, and you trust his hands. He's played snaps as a wide receiver. That's kind of the direction the NFL is going right now. You know, you've got your starters, and then you've got guys that you can move all over the place and find creative ways to get him the football, and that's Antonio Gibson. I do have him as a potential starter because, to me, a third down receiving back is somewhat of a starter. And I see him in sort of that role. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Tony Pollard coming out of Memphis as well. But I do have Kenyon Drake as the comparison. It's not a perfect comp, but the physical comparison is there. It's not just speed and receiving. Like, he can run you over. He's 6'2", 220. He can make you miss. So a really intriguing player with not a lot of running back tape, but there's a lot of upside there. Then my number 9 running back, Eno Benjamin. Definitely a disappointing final season at Arizona State. Was one of the best running backs in his sophomore year, but I thought he was closer to like Zach Moss, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, DeAndre Swift, that kind of chunkier back with good contact balance. You know, he still has good contact balance, but he's a lot skinnier and a lot more shifty than I thought he would, hence the Dion Lewis comparison, and I've got him as kind of a potential starting receiving back. In his sophomore season, he consistently made the first guy miss. Didn't do it quite as much in his junior year. So you're hoping he can kind of get that back. I've got a 4th round grade on him. You don't take him to be your starter, but maybe you are like Jacksonville or some team similar to that where you've got a really good powerful back, and honestly, Leonard Fournette probably won't be back in Jacksonville anyway, but you get the point. You need a guy to come in on 3rd down, make guys miss, create first downs. Can be a threat to run between the tackles, but not necessarily his strength. I think that's Eno Benjamin. And then my number 10 running back, A.J. Dillon out of Boston College. Incredibly difficult player to come up with a comparison for. Now, I know you guys are thirsty for player comps, so I didn't put this on my actual draft board, but I'll give it to you here. Derrick Henry, kind of a comp here. Rare speed for a 250-pound running back. Does take him a little bit longer to get up to that top speed. Does struggle to kind of flip his hips back to find the football. Not the best in the receiving game. But with the right blocking, this guy is just a nightmare to try and tackle. And he's got that length as well, just like Derrick Henry. Now, Derrick Henry's a little taller, a little longer. What is he, 6'3"? Dillon's a little more compact, but definitely can see that length in there. Incredibly effective in college. I just don't know how much it's going to translate to the NFL. It's just a little difficult to project. You know, is he going to be 250-pound Eddie Lacy that couldn't stay on a team? Or is he going to be 250-pound Derrick Henry who you can't tackle? So he's got a kind of a wide range of outcomes, a little bit of risk there, but there is some upside there to get that explosive power back with the massive size. Definitely one of the more intriguing players in this entire class as a whole. So again, guys, if you're curious where I come in on other running backs in this class, there's a lot of other good backs in this class that I didn't talk about in this video. You got guys like DJ Dallas, Scotty Phillips, Cam Akers, a name a lot of people gonna wonder, where's he? Why isn't he in your top 10? Jalen Hurts out of Oklahoma. He could be one of the better running backs in this class. If you want to know where I come in on those guys, head over to my Patreon, patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. Get access to my draft board. If not, no worries. Please do hit that like button. Let me know in the comments below where you guys come in on these players. Cheers as always. We'll see you later. Peace out.